Welcome to your daily dose of Guess the ELO Toonish style, meaning that I know the ELO and you guys will be trying to guess it the whole time. I'm just here to commentate and tell you what's going on. Now, we're just gonna get right into this. The game starts with knight a3. So obviously Toonish viewer is either Magnus Carlsen or heavily Magnus inspired, but probably just Magnus inspired, which we'll see soon. e5, knight c4, e4, d3, d5 follows, kicking the knight. The knight returns home to d2. Now knight f6, e3, and this kind of looks like the cow. And after knight c6, knight e2, bishop d6, knight g3. And yeah, so it looks like we know what's going on here. Toonish viewer is a cow player, and they just got into it in a really strange move order, and obviously Stockfish hates this position for white because it hates openings like the cow. And after queen e7, something strange happens. Toonish viewer does not turn off their brain and just play knight b3 randomly, but instead takes in the center. Whoa. Black takes back, and now, not this, but this happens. Hello, future Toonish here. Looks like we had some file corruption. I'm about to talk about the best moves for black. And castling or simply taking this knight. After ahg, bishop e6, b3, rook d8, there's no immediate tactical win, but you should notice that this position is much easier for black to play, and white's pieces are incredibly passive, especially after a move like bishop d2, and notice that this bishop going to e2 is going to be a terrible bishop, and there's no real castling prospects for the king. Overall, this is going to be a very bad game for white. But this is Guess the ELO, so of course that did not happen. Instead, our first blunder occurs on move 9. Bishop b4 check. This just throws away black's entire advantage after a move like c3. Notice that when the bishop returns home, we take it with check, black takes, and now somehow, miraculously, white is back in the game. But, like I said just before, this is Guess the ELO, and that did not happen here. And you should ask yourself, where do the cow players like to put their bishops? Well, the answer is here and here. So, bishop d2 was played. Now, black should just take the dark square bishop with check, but instead inaccurately develops their bishop to e6. Now, in this position, white plays c3, kicking the dark square bishop, and the bishop inaccurately returns to d6. But if it went to best square c5, there's b4, and don't you see the brilliant move? h5. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, good luck understanding that compensation. We are not going into those Stockfish lines because they're nuts. If you want to, load this position in your own free time. The bishop returns to d6, and white kind of has a stroke of genius. Knight takes d6, queen takes, and now this beautiful move, c4. But what is c4? Now, black lawn castles, and the idea, bishop c3. c4 was played so the bishop could go to an active square on c3. Just a beautiful move. It's also important to note that if Toonish viewer did not find that and the bishop was stuck on d2 with the pawn on c3, this would have been an impossible game. And now, another mistake, queen c5. This is a positional error because it allows a little bit more counterplay from white. So what black should have done is queen e7. Now they have control of the file with the rook, and the queen is forced to move. Now, like I said, queen c5 is a bit of a positional mistake because it allows counterplay, especially with a move like queen a4. And black immediately blunders knight g4. This is another very interesting blunder because it's not a tactical blunder. It's a positional blunder, and it's a big one at that. White correctly now finds bishop e2. This is not an inaccuracy. Best move is also b4. They're basically interchangeable. And now black follows up with another immediate blunder, f5. And again, this is not a tactical error. This is just a huge positional mistake because now b4 is coming, hitting the queen with a tempi, and then b5 hitting the knight, which almost happens. b4, queen e7, and then for whatever reason, Toonish viewer decides to take the knight. And of course, pawn takes bishop, and now b5. And notably, this knight has basically no good squares to move to, so it goes to b8, and now Toonish viewer castles, and this is a position I would love to play as white and would basically hate to play as black. Now black decides to get on the offensive, pushing one of their pawns, and in this position, white is either supposed to take this free pawn or continue bulldozing with c5. If we play c5 and the queen takes, well, this is awful. White can either take this pawn hitting the rook or they can simply play rook f to c1 or rook a to c1. Either work, and, well, black is totally cooked. But instead, white decides to throw away basically their entire advantage with rook f to d1. And now h4, kicking the knight to e2, and somehow this is anyone's game now. We are both attacking each other, and this could go either way. Next is a very interesting moment, g3. Now Stockfish simply wants you to take with the f-pawn. Say the h-pawn recapture, then we simply take with the knight. But instead, bit of a mistake. Rook takes rook, queen takes, and now rook d1 hitting that queen. And you'll notice something interesting. Now the pawn can take with check, and white's advantage is basically gone. And that's exactly what happens. And of course, king takes pawn, rook f8 check to follow, and another interesting moment, white decides to block with the knight, purposely pinning the knight to the king. Now, if black were to play g5, well, obviously they're losing their queen. So black decides to not lose their queen and instead plays queen e7. And they can utilize this now, right? This is a game between two 3,000 ELO players, so moving the bishop diagonally one square is found, and I can hear the comment section roaring, c5. No, that doesn't work. So black plays rook takes knight with check, pawn takes, and then e3 check is played. This is a genjutsu. You could just take this pawn because if you move the bishop, well, there's no discovery here because you're just losing the queen. However, the genjutsu is a very powerful technique, so king g1 is played, followed by queen f6, and then queen b3, blunder. Notice how white's advantage is magically, basically just totally gone again. And that's because this pawn, this genjutsu pawn, is super duper annoying. If white had just played queen c2 to defend this e2 move, then things would have been different and white would have kept their advantage. But now, white has to play this move like rook e1, and this pawn is very annoying, coupled with the queen. Now the king's in check, and if you block with queen e3, well, obviously that's the best move, but it's not played. Instead, king h1, the actual best move, is played. In this position, there's two hanging pawns to take, and actually, this is the much better pawn to take, especially if white gets sloppy and gets back rank mated. But don't worry, that's not how this tale ends. Instead, black takes the pawn on c4, easy counterplay for white, queen h3 check, and then you simply win this pawn. Instead, white goes for the queen trade, black says no way, and takes the pawn on f4. Notice how you still cannot take here because back rank is still a thing. Now the most stockfish mistake of the game happens, h3. Yeah, stockfish because the only move you have to find to get your 1.5 advantage is a5. Everything else is a draw. I'll cover two lines here because most of this stuff is diabolical and very fishy, but yeah, so let's just say if en passant happens, you take with the knight, and now this is just a very comfortable, easy position to convert for black, and white is now somehow in a ton of trouble. This pawn, really annoying. Now, there's a lot of crazy stockfish lines here, but one of them is absolutely insane. But first, we need to look at the wrong execution, and that's if you do not play a5 and instead go for the draw. Queen f1 check, and notably, this rook cannot take because pawn recaptures the check and it's totally winning. Instead, king h2, bishop d5, double attacking this pawn, and now white can take this pawn while simultaneously defending mate. Queen f4 check, king h1, and this is a crucial moment. You have to go queen f1 check going for the draw. And you'll notice this bishop is hanging. Well, if you take it, now white is slightly winning, and the end result is very uncomfortable. After queen h8 check, king d7, white now wins the pawn on e2, and here's the thing. You actually have no way of saving this knight. And even worser, if you take this pawn, well, you're actually just gonna lose your queen. And now let's look at the insane line. a5, bishop takes, b6. Unsuspecting moves that change literally everything. Bishop b4, and now we get the same exact thing as last time, but queen takes b4 is soul crushing. Queen h8 check, king b7, and you'll notice the king is defending the knight and it's on a very safe square, no longer in the middle of the open. Rook takes e2, queen takes b5, and black is crushing. And here's the thing, in the game, queen f1 check was found. No human is finding a5, by the way. And then king h2, queen f4 check, king g1, and now bishop takes b5, and this is dead drawn. Well, it was for like one move, and now white is totally lost. But why is bishop c5 such a big mistake? Well, it's because of queen f1 check, king h2, and now black just has a little too much time on their hands. It's the same exact idea. b6. Yeah, it's literally the same idea as before, and black gets everything they want, and white's in a ton of trouble. And in the game, queen f1 check, king h2, and was b6 found? No! Queen f4 check, king h1, and knight d7. And actually, black is totally fine here. They're actually completely winning, but obviously not as winning as if they found b6, but this is just crushing regardless. Tuni's viewer is in a ton of trouble here. So they bring their bishop home to g1, and now queen f1 is played. A bit of a mistake because now g7 falls, which is actually somehow found here. And if the queen takes, not what happened by the way, there's queen g8 check, knights move backwards, we take, and yeah, this is a dead draw. Instead, b6 is played, queen h8 check to follow, the king goes to b7, and now the h4 pawn falls, and now bishop c6, and look at that, it's very, very close to a dead draw again. This is a very spooky mate threat, so best way to defend it is actually queen f2, which is played, defending your rook and basically entombing the queen. And now bishop takes g2 check. Insane blunder because you just take here with check, and there, and then king h2. And now we have our second instance of back-to-back blunderage, and this is the most insane blunder I've ever seen. Knight e5, and this only works if queen takes the bishop with check, and this looks great, but actually there's a counter check. Knight f3 check. There's a lot more, so hold on. You can't take the knight, so you gotta move your king. Queen takes your queen with check, you recapture. And now, knight takes e1 check, king f2, and now knight f3, defending promotion square, hitting the bishop. If king takes, you take the bishop, hitting the pawn with a fork. And there's no way this was seen, by the way. And somehow Tuni's viewer finally escapes the genjutsu and takes this unbelievably annoying pawn on e2. Remember how that happened? Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Change the game. And in the game, knight f3 check happens, but this is useless because of king g3. And knight takes g1. Who cares? Queen takes g2 check. The queen's gotta take now, and yeah. And the reason I'm saying and yeah is because this game is over. Yep, Tuni's viewer flagged their opponent here. Doesn't matter, Tuni's viewer is completely winning. Yeah. And here's the thing, I'm not telling you the elo. You're gonna comment what you think your guess is, and I'll pin the right comment. And let's take this a step further. If you can guess the correct elo of one player, doesn't even have to be both, like their exact elo at the time of the game, I'll give you a month of diamond membership. Good luck.